Okay, everybody, before we get going on the show today, we have some really exciting news to share with you. Andrea, do you want to break the news?
We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we're going to do a live recording.
It's going to be on Zoom on Thursday, September 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Dr. Cooper, we also have some big news about the website.
We do. We finally have our fatsciencepodcast.com website up and running, and actually that's where you can go to sign up for this event.
Okay, so go to the website, click on 100th episode, the little button at the top, fill out the form, and you're going to have a chance to ask Dr. Cooper that question live on Zoom to celebrate this amazing milestone. And it wouldn't happen, it couldn't happen without all of you listening from all over the world. All right, let's get to the show.
You know, it is like night and day, absolute difference. We went to dinner last night and somebody was saying, well, we don't do this often. You must not eat burgers and ice cream often, because that's what we had for dinner last night. And I kind of laughed in my head thinking, well, I mean, yeah, I do sometimes, I do. If we've gone on a big run or a big hike or a big mountain bike or a big ski, that's what we eat. We got to get in a lot of calories. So it's not something, more importantly, it's just not something I think about today. I try just not to think about it, not to think about the dieting and what I'm eating and how I'm eating it and how it's affecting me. And I think that's what it's really come down to for me, is like, gosh, wouldn't normal just be to not be thinking about food and exercise as a way to like lose weight?
Welcome to Fat Science. I'm Mark Wright, along with Andrea Taylor and Dr. Emily Cooper. It's great to see you two.
Hello.
All right, on the show this week, the dangers of under-fueling. And we have a very special guest this week, Gina Davito. Gina, it's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Gina, this is going to be super fun because your whole life you have dealt with kind of a struggle when it comes to your relationship with food and fueling. And you seem to be pretty athletic at this point in your life. And this is going to be super fun because food is, and we've talked about this, Dr. Cooper, in the past, a lot of people see food as the enemy, don't they?
Oh, yeah. They do, unfortunately. But our society has kind of set that scenario up, I think, for a lot of people, unfortunately. And the more people seem to think about the food they're eating and try to manipulate that, the worse things seem to get, as far as I can see, metabolically.
Yeah. And Gina, when you were a kid, you told us before we hit the record button that your struggle with food started pretty early. What was it like as a kid when it came to food?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, I came from a big Italian family. So in that, food is love, and we think about food all of the time. And so there wasn't a lot of restriction happening within my family, but I do remember looking around as soon as I could remember to my friends as a young girl and teenager, and just seeing my friends be able to eat an appropriate amount, and they weighed an appropriate amount. And I would go to lunch or, stay at their houses overnight and think, God, I'm still hungry. I still want to eat. And they've stopped eating, and I can't stop eating. And not because there's no emotional side of it. There was it was just physically, I was still hungry. And we were all doing the same things, running around all day, doing the same thing, going to the same basketball team practice, and that was it. I couldn't stop eating, but like I said, I really tried to start restricting it. And that's where the trouble started.
Oh, boy. Dr. Cooper, obviously Gina's a patient now. The idea that she couldn't stop eating, is there a medical foundation for that? Or what was going on, do you think, inside Gina back then?
Yeah, I think people fail to see that kind of symptomatology, it can be, if it's very extreme, there's a term called hyperphagia, where you literally cannot stop eating. But there can be different degrees of appetite dysregulation. And that's basically a symptom of an underlying metabolic problem. So there was definitely a metabolic reason for that, but it wasn't diagnosed. And so we don't know. Now, most of those are genetically based, but they can be many different things. And so without having past lab work or any of that, we don't know. But knowing Gina's kind of make up now, you can kind of guess might have been going on. But yeah, that's a symptom. Just like excess body weight is a symptom of underlying metabolic dysfunction, abnormal appetite regulation is also a symptom. And
Yeah.
often they go together, but sometimes they don't.
Gina, were you overweight as a kid?
I was a little overweight. It wasn't crazy, but yes, I was a little overweight.
Yeah. And Andrea, when you were a kid, did you ever struggle with the idea that you felt like you were always hungry, or was it more of just you were sort of put on a calorie restriction at a pretty early age?
I was never the bottomless pit, so to speak, but I was definitely, I could eat a decent amount. Let's just say a decent amount, and I'm sure that the portions in my family were bigger than probably portions in other families because we loved food, and food was definitely love, and food was definitely very important and a really big deal. But I wouldn't say I was a bottomless pit, so to speak, but I was definitely the chubby kid.
Yeah.
And not the skinny kid, always in the top percentile, as they say, because, I mean, they would weigh you in front of everybody in the class. I mean, I knew I was the fattest one.
Wow.
So, that was always there. And then the doctor would always say, well, she's got to go on another diet. We got to cut back on the food. We got to get that food down. And then there would be a Weight Watchers or some other new diet would be introduced for me, or my mother would be on a diet and we would go on it together, or, there would be some new diet was happening.
Yeah. And Gina, as you got into your teen years, you started dieting, is that right?
That's right. Unlike a lot of my friends, like Andrea just mentioned, I didn't have parents who listened to those doctors. I did not have the parents who said, oh, calories in, calories out, that's what we're going to do. But the doctors certainly said it, like you mentioned, Andrea. And they thought, too young. She's too young to do that. But as soon as I was sort of able to make my own choices, I had heard those doctors and said, well, the doctors must be right. And so I restricted on my own and did. And like I said, I didn't do as much calories in, calories out as I just did full restriction. It was the fad diets, right? The Atkinson's, oh, okay, we're going to cut carbs out. That must be the right thing. The low fat, we're going to cut fat out, et cetera. So it was always something.
Yeah. And did the diets work at that point? I mean, or was it kind of a yo-yo thing?
It was definitely a yo-yo thing. I did lose quite a bit on Atkinson's the first time I did that, right in college. So I was right around the age of 17. And then, that was, it stayed off for a little bit, plateaued. And that after college, it just came right back. And by the age of 29 is when I started with Dr. Cooper. But, it was between when I plateaued and at 29, I had to eat less and less and work out more and more to just try to keep the plateau. And I couldn't.
Wow.
You couldn't, remember?
Yeah. Oh, God. Yes.
So
But you didn't do like the crash diets and all
It
those
was
kind
worse than that.
I just kept trying to eat less and work out more, less and work out more until I just wasn't eating. I was really down
And you were working out.
Yep, juicing and smoothies and maybe some lettuce salad and working out 3 to 4 hours a day.
Right.
And I mean real hard workouts.
You did the physical thing. I did the
Yeah.
eating just hot dogs or eating just grapefruit.
Oh, goodness.
Well,
Just the different
and
fads.
Gina, what was happening with your weight at the time you were doing that?
Oh, it was just slowly creeping up and then very quickly creeping up. And I luckily had Dr. Cooper shared some office space with a girl I was going to the gym with. And it wasn't anything to do with Dr. Cooper. She was a physical therapist. And she was going to the gym with me all this time. And she was a triathlete in very good shape. And she was looking at me, and then we'd go to eat to a restaurant after the gym for 3 to 4 hours, and she'd eat an appropriate meal, and I'd sit there and go, yeah, I'll have some salad or something, and I'd eat some of it. And she looked at me and said, there's this doctor in my office building. You should try to get into her because something's wrong. You're gaining weight, and I see what you eat. So that's how I got to Dr. Cooper, because it was horrible.
So how much were you working out and how little were you eating?
Oh, I was working out at least 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. We would do 3 hours of spin class, really
Oh,
hard spin class.
my gosh.
And I was eating, I would juice, I would take vegetables and fruit, put them through the juicer. I would have a smoothie every day. And I would go to Whole Foods and get some salad from the salad bar, maybe every day, maybe not for the last one. Yep.
Wow. 3 hours a day. And did you see
And
carb?
gaining weight.
Oh,
Absolutely gaining weight.
and
And
I'm guessing you saw carbs as the enemy at this point.
absolutely the enemy. In fact, at that point in time, Dr. Cooper, I don't think you did not have the questionnaire that you now have, which patients fill out, that says, what are you eating? So now Dr. Cooper has a little questionnaire that you say what you eat at the AM and the PM and snacks, et cetera. And she didn't have that at the time. And so I was telling her, sure, I'm eating carbs. When I first began with her, she said, you have to start eating carbs. And I would say, oh, I am. I'm starting. I'm being good. And finally, a year into it, she said, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look right. Your nutrition doesn't look right. Your blood work is off. You're not eating. You must not be doing something. I said, I am. She said, what are you eating? I said, well, I'm eating some quinua in my salad. She said, Jesus, that's not what I meant by carbs. I mean, I can still see her face. I might be the reason you have that questionnaire now. Because our ideas, Andrea and Mark, are so warped of what food is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for you, that was a big step to put quinoa in a salad.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I want to go back, Dr. Cooper, to what Gina was talking about. We've talked about diet damage over the episodes of this podcast. That's really what we're talking about, right? When you start as a teenager restricting calories and going on these diets and going up and down and up and down, that's long lasting, isn't it?
It's really long lasting. And as far as any research out there, we don't know if it's reversible on its own because there's never been a study long enough to prove that it is. But yeah, and it is kind of a touchy thing listening to Gina's story. And that's one reason why she hasn't come on until now, because we're like, okay, is this person, really walking the talk, walking the walk or whatever it is, walking the talk. But she is really working so hard at it now, and has been for quite a while, the fueling aspect. But because it was sensitive, because when you hear the story, it sounds like a full-blown eating disorder. It doesn't sound like someone just dieting. It sounds like someone who has like a diagnosable eating disorder. But what was kind of interesting is like your body was somehow tolerating this, because of the extreme slowing of your metabolism and the energy conservation. It's called adaptation, metabolic adaptation. It was adapting to it so much, that it didn't show the extreme kind of findings that you often see in full-blown eating disorders. But you certainly were eating and exercising at a level, the energy intake output was definitely in that category, but it would be, really severe disordered eating because it was really hard to change it because you also didn't trust your body at all, and that was like really hard.
Yeah. And to her friends and family, I'm guessing they looked at what Gina was doing and were like, hey, good for you. You're doing it right. Exercising a ton, drinking smoothies. I mean, that kind of behavior is almost revered in our culture and honored in our society, that people think that discipline is somehow the best thing for you. But it was absolutely harming your body, wasn't it, Gina?
Yeah, absolutely. And to what Dr. Cooper just said, I almost felt better when I wasn't eating and working out that much. My body was so adapted to it that I actually felt better. And when I was eating and fueling it, when I started with Dr. Cooper, I was not feeling well, and my body was not doing the things it was supposed to do. It almost rejected it. And so, I listened a lot to the podcast where people have trouble, and I know it's a struggle to like get it moving forward and doing the eating and maybe working out a little less, and you don't feel great when you're trying to reverse this, but it is worth the reverse, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work, and to the point where I finally started feeling like, oh, I do need the fuel. My body's finally realizing, and my brain is finally realizing together that I need the fuel to do the work.
So what was the turning point for you, Gina? When did you decide that you really needed to get control of it? And I'd love after you say that, what did Dr. Cooper do to start to reverse this thing?
Well, I'll take the second question first because it's really both sort of the same. I do remember it was very much a sort of a cocktail of a few drugs, for lack of a better term, and we tried a number of things. And I do remember the med that came up, and we had tried a few different meds, and one of them you finally put me on, which was a seizure medicine, and combined with some other things that got me to start eating carbohydrates. And I will never forget that I finally started eating a bagel, and I thought, oh, a bagel and a piece of bread, and it was the real complex carbs that I could eat and feel okay. And I don't mean physically like they were making me sick, but I mentally and emotionally felt okay. But it took a lot of maneuvering around of this, what I'll call a cocktail of meds, to figure out what was the correct. But as far as what I wanted I was going to do, if she said, stand on your head in the corner every day for an hour, I was going to do whatever she said because I knew she had it, but I didn't know, I didn't know when we were going to get there.
Wow. So Dr. Cooper, was Gina's metabolism really stubborn? And was it hard to turn around?
Oh, well, it's like if you have, a high-speed train moving in one direction and it's the opposite direction you want to be going.
You're headed to Tokyo, by the way.
I mean, that's kind of what was going on. It was very cemented in the metabolic adaptation, and we actually had lab work that showed it. Every single one of what we call orexogens were just sky high. Orexogens are the famine signals circulating in your brain. Ghrelin, AGRP, neuropeptide Y, and then every single one of the security signals like leptin, insulin, glucose, all of those were just bottomed out. And so it was just the worst possible imbalance. I mean, a lot of people have those imbalances, but you can imagine with the degree, the severity of the adaptation because the extreme efforts, can't say Gina's not a driven person, but and it was emotionally just devastating for Gina because as she's doing all this, her body weight was like going up at a pretty fast pace. I mean, she was fully into obesity range, and it was just continuing to go up really fast. So our first thing was just trying to get it to like somehow stabilize. And so when you have somebody like that, the patient might not realize they're making progress because what you're doing is you're slowing down a freight train first, and they're still on a freight train going the wrong way for a while until you can get that to stop and then to get it to turn around. And luckily we have pharmacology. Luckily we have laboratory evidence of that helps kind of see the picture. If you had no labs, you would still kind of be able to figure out, oh, wow, this is not a good situation and start throwing things at this. But having the labs really helps. But there's a lot of little intricate things that you've got to control to get that train to turn around. And so the main area that she was talking about that finally, because one of the weird things is people, this is true for people with full-blown eating disorders too, but also people with metabolic dysfunction, they can sense in their brain. I mean, I'm not saying this based on a science study, but from many conversations with my patients, they seem to be able to sense in their brain before something happens. Like they can sense that they are vulnerable physiologically to an abnormal, like weight gain acceleration. We talk about it's not about weight, but there's dysfunctional weight gain. There's abnormal weight gain that can be just like Gina's describing while you're exercising like this and hardly eating, and your weight is increasing, not necessarily at first at a slow pace, and then it's like really fighting you. But a lot of people feel that even before the weight starts changing, they can feel in their brain. And that feeling is part of the panic that drives people to restrict more. And, and to be afraid to take a bite, to be afraid to reduce their exercise. And so when we finally kind of got control over the famine signals that come from the hypothalamus with this, enough of this key medication that was not on its own, it wouldn't have been as helpful, but because it was part of, as Gina said, kind of a cocktail that was supporting the metabolic system, it made a huge difference because it was able to finally get control enough. It's like that those famine signals can cross a threshold where everything changes. And that's that turning of the freight of the high-speed train stops and starts going the other way. And that sensation, even before any weight goes down or anything, a person feels more confident to eat. And they don't have the same hang-ups. And that also is true in sometimes in patients with full-blown like anorexia. They can sense once the refeeding process is there enough to where the brain's nourished and the famine signals drop, they're not as afraid to eat, And it's not because of a conscious thing. It's more of it seems to be a physiologic sensation. But I'm getting that from lots of patients are telling me that. And I listen to that because I feel like even if we're looking at things and saying, well, it doesn't look so bad. And the patient's like, oh yeah, I know. Don't you think we need to add back this X or something, this specific medicine? And I'm thinking, they must be sensing something, and then we look further to see, and it makes sense most of the time. So anyway, it's just very, very interesting, but it's just that the degree, it wasn't that Gina's body was unusually stubborn. It's just that what it had been through, it was very good at metabolic adaptation. And we're designed for that because otherwise, what if we're in a famine or, we've evolved. We're not the only organism that's like that, but we can definitely conserve energy if needed. And what was her body to think was happening?
And that's why so many people, I think, Dr. Cooper, swear by these fad diets because the body, you hear about cutting out all the carbs and I lost X amount and your body is just adapting to this terrible situation you've put it in by eating just meat, right? The body can survive on a lot of different fuels, but it's certainly not optimal, right?
No, and I do see more extreme cases like this in people who have that high exercise component, or people who did childhood competitive sports that also were dealing with weight challenges. You see that because from an early age, there's this energy out, energy in imbalance, and the exercise loads can do the opposite of what people think. They would think, oh, that speeds up your metabolism. But in fact, if it's underfueled, that metabolic adaptation becomes even stronger and even more tenacious.
So when did it all start to balance out? Like when did you start to feel so-called normal-ish?
Yeah, normal-ish. That's a good question
Because
because
nobody's ever normal. What is normal? Who the hell knows?
Right.
I don't think there really is a normal, but you have to have something called normal. So let's just
Right.
say
Well,
normal-ish.
what I'll say as normal would be for me not thinking about the diet, the food, and the exercise as a way to lose weight. That is my version of what I would call normal, right? Because while it still isn't all the way there, I would say I'm normal-ish. That's a great way to say it because I still do have to think really hard about fueling my workouts. So as you pointed out, Mark, I would say I'm far more athletic, extremely more athletic than I was when I was working out 3 hours a day 12 years ago, right? Today I'm Nordic skiing all winter, every day. I'm racing Nordic ski. I'm mountain biking all summer long, which is very difficult. I'm trail running. I'm doing all of these things, and those need appropriate fueling, right? Obviously. But I know that they do. And Dr. Cooper, we were talking about this, used to tell me repeatedly, take goo with you, right? The goo things, that the gross tasting things you take in the middle of your workout. And she would tell me that 12 years ago, if you're going to do a workout, take those with you and make sure you're having them throughout your workout so that your blood sugar stays where it needs to be, or at least tries to stay where it needs to be and doesn't dip down. And I finally started doing that a couple of years ago, and it's made all the difference in the world. But really just also realizing that those small meals, as you always all talk about constantly, small meals throughout the day. And I still have to remind myself sometimes to do that. Small meals, and eat before you're starving, and, eating a lot throughout the day, really eating more than you probably think you need, and knowing that that's actually going to make you better. And my blood tests have really shown that the more I feel like I'm eating, the better my nutrition is, and the better my blood sugar is, and the better my muscle versus fat percentages are, et cetera.
Wow. It really sounds, Gina, like, Andrea's talked about many episodes in the past of just being set free. I mean,
Yeah.
the freedom from worrying about food. It's gotta feel good. Was there a turning point, or was that an evolution for you in terms of just that realization that I don't have to worry about this anymore?
It was quite the evolution. I had a lot of ups and downs. I remember Dr. Cooper giving me you need to be eating like a tub of ice cream at night. Like you need to be really eating ice cream late at night and thinking, Jesus, this lady, is she doing the right? Is this really the thing? But I really sat there for night after night for a while, probably 5-7 years ago, and would sit there with one of those little pints of ice cream Talenti and just eating that every night,
Remember that?
as much of it as I could. So I think that was really the turning point that kicked it into, I really kicked myself into a gear where I was finally eating enough. And it felt like I was, for laughs, a fat kid, just sitting there eating my ice cream on the couch at night. And I really had to slow down the exercise. And now I don't even call it exercise, right?
Yeah.
When I go out, I hesitate to say that. We went for a run this morning because we wanted to run along the lake, right? It's not an exercise anymore. I don't do it for that purpose.
Yeah.
Well, it's not exercising to lose weight, it's exercising for health. I look at it
Yeah.
as a different thing. It's like more about being healthy, and like the eating is more about joy and more about your health than about losing weight. So you think about food as like, well, let's just keep everything even all day. And it's not about dieting. Like it's just a very different mindset, and it's a really different thing. And I try, like with friends of mine who are all obsessed with food because they're looking at it as something negative and something to cut back on or to hold back on, or that they can't eat. I'm like, think of it in the opposite way. Think of it as something you can eat. Then it takes a really long time to make that shift, to turn it around as to, don't think of what you can't eat. Think of what you can eat. Think of what you can have joy from. Even when you're thinking, oh, that's bad for me. No, no, no. Think of what's good for you. And it's a total paradigm shift. It's really different.
Yeah. And Dr. Cooper, I don't know if this was you who told me this or if I read a study which was about when you're thinking of food as always being bad whilst you're eating it,
Yes.
that it's actually you metabolize it differently. Was that
Yes.
something you told me,
Yes,
or if I read?
I told you about that. And one of the best studies that illustrates that is that milkshake study that we always talk about, where the subjects were told that the milkshake they were going to consume was either an indulgent high-calorie shake or a sensible low-calorie shake, but it was the same shake. So if they thought it was the low-calorie their ghrelin would not come down after they ate. And so that's the hunger hormone. So it normally goes down after we eat, and it prevented it from resetting just their sense that they were being deprived or that they were getting shortchanged in calories. But there have been a number of kind of studies and reports about that type of thing. And so it is interesting. And that was another thing. It's just working on that mindset is just, it's so hard. But as you said, Gina, it kind of goes hand in hand with the physiology, because until that physiology starts to, until you become nourished, you can't change the drivers of that abnormal mindset.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Cooper, I think it's so amazing that you brought Gina on to the program, because it's one thing just to avoid food and to have a negative attitude toward food, but it's another thing if you do that and are working out 3 or 4 hours a day.
Oh, I don't know how you could do 4
That's
hours
crazy.
a day.
Oh
I
my
just
gosh.
don't know how you could do that.
Oh,
Well, and that's why, like, I really thought Gina could help other people out there so much, because it's so opposite of what we always hear. And what if Gina had gone to, the typical medical place for her, quote, weight problem? What would they have said? Well, they probably wouldn't believe her. They would probably say, oh, you
Yeah.
can't be exercising that much and you must be eating more than you realize. And they would have had her on just diet after diet, probably. I mean, I don't know if they would, but what else are they going to do? It's just so. Anyway, I think it's so great that we ended up, because I learn a lot from every single patient that I see too, and I don't like metabolic adaptation, but I have a lot of respect for the power of it. And I'm definitely not fooled by that, by the power of metabolic adaptation. I know that it's so incredibly devastating to people that are going through a situation like that, where they get trapped in that. I call it like a food prison, but it's just, you just feel like you have nowhere to go. You're already putting out that much effort on the exercise. You're limiting your food intake. You're seeing the body just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, out of control. And in your head, your thoughts are getting more and more consumed by all of this. And that's just no way to live.
yeah.
No, but it's then like you have to treat it. It's almost like you, as the doctor, have to like go to war with it or something and like create a battle plan.
Yeah, I mean, cases like Gina's, that's like an emergency. I mean, it seems silly because maybe you weren't going to die from a heart attack or something, but it was to that level. Like when we look at, the rate of weight gain and that abnormal rate, and this is a person's not even eating anything. And so what's going to happen, you're just trying to get them to eat food. Their body's in such a tremendous conservation mode. The only way out of it is to eat your way out of it. But the body doesn't trust the situation. So that's where the pharmacology comes in. It's
Wow.
to help reinforce that trust.
But speaking of like, what could she die from? Not that you were going to
Well-
die right away because you were very young, but I mean, like, what kind, like, aside from the fatty liver and cholesterol issues, like, what other medical things could happen as a result of that?
Well, I mean, we can't say that it couldn't be, something serious, because, I mean, malnutrition and exercising without enough fuel can actually lead to, especially with glucose imbalances, can lead to arrhythmias, or, there could be some serious consequences. But I've seen a lot of things over the years, and boy, the body has a good adaptation to this, caloric restriction. I've even, I've done a fair number of volunteer efforts at endurance races, like the mountain races, the ultra marathons and stuff, and had medical tents at the end and things, and helped people at the end. And some of the stuff I saw there, I just couldn't believe. People that went 50 miles, in an endurance race and finished pretty well, but then collapsed in the medical tent, and they had no business being even in that race, like full-blown, really eating disorder, anorexia type situation, up to 40 pounds underweight, and completing a race like that. And I'm just thinking, and that is very dangerous. But you see people people, their bodies can withstand a tremendous amount of this. And so that's why also the medical community fails, because they need to be the ones that step in and say, stop, this isn't right. This is medically unsafe and you're in a danger zone. They have to recognize that instead of saying, oh, it's great you're exercising like that, and aren't you smart to limit this food and that food. Instead, they make things worse usually because that patient wants someone to step in and almost help them get out of the situation.
Yeah.
They know it's not right. And so for the medical community to not recognize that, I feel like that just cements it in even more for people.
Yeah, through college, while I was dieting quite a bit, and till I was sort of on my way with Dr. Cooper, I was unfortunately my blood sugar was extremely low, and still dips occasionally, and I was passing out a lot, right? And what is the medical outside of Dr. Cooper and maybe several others? I don't know. I've never met them. What is the medical response to that? Well, have a cookie. Truly, it is. It's gosh. Okay, we'll have a seat. We'll give you some juice, and there is no actual. There's reactive, right? There's no proactive fix for low blood sugar, or even low blood pressure. And I was, as you guys spoke about with your disordered eating episode, I was in that low blood pressure, low blood sugar, high heart rate, or low. So I was in that sort of camp where medical professionals were seeing me because I was literally passing out. But they were just saying, oh, well, we don't know what it is. You've got these things, these low blood sugar, low blood pressure.
Yeah. And you talk about that, and that too is a symptom, of metabolic dysfunction. And we talk about the selfish brain, where the brain starts to prioritize its energy supply and steal fuel from the rest of the body. And that leads to blood sugar dysregulation too. And it is a real problem. In fact, low blood sugar could be deadly. It could. It can lead to seizures. It can lead to coma. It could lead to death. Most people think that doesn't happen if you're not taking insulin, but there are cases of it. And you do worry about it in endurance athletes too, because endorphins promote hypoglycemia. They make the hypoglycemia worse. So, you often think of people that have like climbing accidents and stuff like that. Is there some kind of component in some of those cases of hypoglycemia affecting judgment and things like that? But those are just kind of side notes of what could happen. And also with heart rate and blood pressure dysregulation, there can be, as I said, bad consequences. But when you came in, Gina, I think like you were having a lot of symptoms of the metabolic dysfunction and adaptation. And your body was just going to keep doing it, though. It was going to keep going if that's what you were going to do. It's going to keep going, keep gaining weight. I don't know where you would have been. But
I think I was, and I guess I should mention for listeners, I think I was probably 230 at that point, maybe around that. I know Dr. Cooper won't mention it, but I think that's where I was. I think I'm 135 now. And I know we talk about it's not always about weight, but there is a point where for me, and I've been 135 now for a while, if this feels very regulated, very much where I'm supposed to be, I build muscle, I see myself building muscle. And so to me, this feels very healthy and I'm not trying to lose weight. This feels where I was supposed to be when I was a child, feeling like I was in a fat suit, right?
Well, and we do, extensive body composition that shows where the normal weight range is, and this is in the normal weight range, and it's exceeding like the minimum lean mass amounts and stuff like that. But so it's just more of a natural place for you, and as you said, you've been stable there for a long time. But it's just. It takes time. This isn't overnight, right? Because we're talking about 12 years almost.
Gina, I would love to, as we wrap things up, I'd love for you to talk to that person, because I know there are people who are just where you were. They're working out like crazy. They're skipping carbs. They're eating salads and they're struggling. And I want you to take that person by the hand. Maybe you're sitting down to coffee and you say, look, we need to talk. And action.
Absolutely. Don't give up. It is a struggle. It is something you have to think about, and you have to think about every day. You have to think about the eating and eating appropriately. And if that takes, you don't have a Dr. Cooper in your corner, unfortunately, you may not. You may have to do it on your own and see a nutritionist who will help you eat all of the appropriate portions of all of the appropriate things and fuel your body correctly as you're trying to do this work, because you can do it. It's just going to take a lot, both mentally and physically. And there's going to be some struggles.
Yeah, and the paradox is so striking. Dr. Cooper a little bit ago said you need to eat your way out of this situation, and where you were, Gina, is the mentality is I gotta spin class my way out of this situation. I have to exercise my way to my
Starve
goal.
myself.
And yeah, wow. Dr. Cooper, when you look at Gina, what I'm guessing you feel a sense of pride and accomplishment and just
Well, not so
what's
much
your
that. I mean, I put that all on Gina, really. I mean, I'm not just saying that because, I mean, my part in it is just trying to be a guide, and Gina has to do all the work. So that's like, and she still has to keep doing the work like every single day, all the time, because the damage is so strong, and she knows that. I mean, like it's like, and also it sounds like as a child, first of all, you probably had some kind of mild metabolic dysfunction as a child, but it wasn't diagnosed. And so then you took it in your own hands and started like that first diet. And then that's why we call it diet damage, because it amplified everything probably over the years. We don't have proof of that, but had you never done that, you wonder what would have be the situation. Would it be that your metabolism was so crippled, like, by that, I mean, on top of whatever the original thing is. And I think the original problem probably did have to do with the blood sugar regulation, hypoglycemia tendencies, that some families have and some people have. But, it's a shame. And that's why we have to really focus. I think Gina should probably also speak out to like children and parents. And it's like, let's get these kids. Good thing Gina's parents didn't really buy into that, which is great. And back then, I doubt there was really anything that would have been able to be diagnosed, back then with the tools that were available or treated. But I think the best thing was just not having the messaging to do the dieting. But then as you start getting older, you need that support of, hey, what's going on? Like always see these things as a symptom of underlying metabolic dysfunction, not something that, is because of willpower or that you have to take into your own hands to just restrict food, exercise more, because the consequences of that can be devastating regardless of what people say. People will continually downplay that. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I think a lot of it's the industry. The diet industry is huge. They make so much money on people just doing diet after diet. And I think, and there's a ton of stigma around, weight. And eating and how much people eat. There's so much stigma around it and shaming. And so, unfortunately, that's been the past, but hopefully the future will be different.
yeah.
That
And
is.
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gina.
No, I think that is absolutely the part I have more passion to speak to, as you mentioned, Dr. Cooper, are the children and parents, because I completely agree. As I think I mentioned, looking back at these pictures of me as a teenager, I didn't need to diet. And I think it's good that our culture is kind of coming around to this all bodies are good bodies sort of mentality a little bit. We still have, of course, the dieting culture. It's still out there, but I really, really, really encourage, especially just holistic eating and eating correctly and eating the non-processed foods over the dieting. And I can't say that enough for parents. And if you're seeing the issues where you think, especially if you've got a larger family, many children, and you see one child different than the others, which wasn't the case for me. But if you can see that one child is eating differently, has this bottomless pit mentality, is maybe gaining weight irregularly, just to get that child help instead of putting them on a diet. Despite what one doctor may say, or even two doctors, I think you really need to reach out to the correct doctor. I certainly had blood sugar issues within my family, and that's where that, as you mentioned, Dr. Cooper, where that came from. I've certainly had them from the time I was young. That's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so inspiring. Gina, I sure appreciate you coming on the show. Andrea, what's your reaction? I mean, the thing that I'm left with, Andrea, is that, and you've said this many times, everyone's journey in the metabolic space is completely unique to them. And but I'd love to know just what your reaction is to having spent some time with Gina.
It's just everyone's body is so different. I mean, everyone comes at the solution or their the way that they come to a better place so differently. And it's just also interesting, like how we all came to our different cocktails or our different places differently. But it all comes to, like, at the end, what we all come to is like, oh, now we don't have to worry about food and we can just enjoy it. And we all come to that. And that just makes me so happy that we can all just be like happy about it. We can sit down to the table and have a great time. And people can exercise and just do it for pleasure and for health. And that it's not a source of anxiety, that all of this stuff isn't like becoming like tense and anxiety and like, oh my God. And like that's to me, that's the goal. Like that it should just be about health and that we shouldn't be freaking out about food. We shouldn't be freaking out about exercise and we shouldn't be, like that is just where it's all been so disastrous. And it's just so amazing that we've all been able to come to this same place just through all different roads.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you started things out today, Gina, by, saying you came from a large Italian family. And in many cultures, food is love. And I feel like in the American culture, we've kind of disconnected from that idea. But I think food is love, and we should enjoy it, and we should share it. And it should bring us together in a really good way, and it shouldn't.
It could bring peace.
Yeah, and I Andrea, this is, and I don't know if I've told you this, Anna. I love the fact that you are so comfortable and bold. Like, hell yes, we're having dessert.
Oh, always.
It's not just yes, we're having dessert.
Mm-hmm. Always. And I think that's like, but that's sort of where we've all been able to, all of us, literally, have been able to come to. And it's like, that's what it should be about. Like, that's how we should be able to be. And for so many times and so many years when we were going through the ugh part, we weren't. And we were looked at as like, oh, look at them. They're having bread. They're having dessert. What's wrong with them? They shouldn't. And it's like it takes that away. And that's why I always say, oh, this whole thing has been so freeing.
Yeah. Dr. Cooper, I've run into several people recently that I haven't seen for a long time. And they're like, oh my gosh, you look good. You look so good. And I'm like, and I feel almost guilty because it's like, if I had beaten a certain disease and they said, way to go, Mark, it's like,
right.
I can't take credit for this, but
No.
Dr. Cooper, the transformation over the last, 12 years that we've known each other has been, I mean, I look back at old pictures and I was really unhealthy. And I'm just so grateful that I've had you in my life and have a medical solution to what was bringing me down. So,
Right. Me too. I always say I'm a product of science and Dr. Cooper.
Absolutely. Yesterday, I called her a luxury doctor, which we have to recognize is the case. We are very lucky to have her.
Actually.
I view it that way as well. I wish there were many, many of you, and that would be ideal. Unfortunately, we are the lucky ones.
Yeah. Gina, any final words from you as we sign off?
No, I think you all have said it best. Cheers to seeing food and exercise as not a way to lose weight.
Yeah. And Dr. Cooper, final word?
Yeah, I think just, again, as everyone said, it's not really about the weight as much as it is about the mindset, just the freedom from that way of thinking and the anxiety around that, and enabling you to be way more in the present now and interact with other people instead of like in that small world occupying your brain about the anxiety around, food and exercise, regardless of the body weight. Just to break free of that is the key.
Yeah. Wow, that's been great. All right, thanks everybody for another edition of Fat Science.
No diets, no agendas, just science that makes you feel better.